What's going on, guys? Krenko here, and I'm going to be talking about this pocket knife today. Finally, this is the Shirogorov F95T Gen 4 in blue titanium, and it's really a phenomenal knife, man. I really like it a lot, just to spoil that, but we'll get to a bunch of things that, I have some hang-ups about, owning a pocket knife like this, but it's really been enjoyable. The amount of time that I spent with it, which I think I bought this maybe about a year and a half ago, something like that. And I haven't done a ridiculous amount of cutting with it, just to be fair. But, I'm an action guy, so I love the feel of deploying and closing this knife. That's pretty much the biggest thing that I enjoy about it. But anyway, let's get some specs out of the way. We have a 3.75 inch blade and a 4-inch cutting edge, actually, as a whole, which maybe we'll touch on that because that's pretty interesting. And the weight is like 4.7 ounces, which is, it's on the heavier side, but doesn't really bother me because it's really, it's very thin and it's narrow in this direction, so it carries really nice. So it doesn't really bug me that much. It is, I wear jeans and things like that all the time, so it's not going to bother my pockets at all. I'm not really going to feel that. If I had basketball shorts or flimsy pants on, which I typically don't wear, I'm not really a flimsy pants guy. But then, it's probably an issue. But some of the good things that I like about this, I really like the milling on this. The other Shiros, I have a neon also, which I'll pull out here. But the milling on this in particular is really cool to me. I don't know if it's a nostalgia thing because this is kind of like, I don't know, this is reminiscent of Ninja Turtles, F95T, tortoise, turtle, whatever they refer to it as. It's kind of this is the turtle pattern. So that's kind of Leonardo with the blue and everything. But yeah, it's just a really cool, I like this texturing. I like the contrast of the color they kind of got this like scratchy stonewash blue situation. And then this is kind of a darker stonewash. I almost kind of wish that they took this dark stonewash vibe and put that onto these areas, these upper parts of the scale. I don't know. I think that would have been a little bit cooler. Not to like jump into bad stuff right now, but yeah. Anyway, I do. As a whole, this is sweet. I love that these grooves kind of provide. At least in my hands, I think it's these 3 grooves here, kind of. Yeah, you can kind of see like one finger goes there, the other one just rests beautifully in these areas when you're gripping the knife. And I really enjoy that. I mean, the whole handle as a whole it's really ergonomic. I mean, everything is knocked down and rounded and little tiny micro chamfers. I mean, the fit and finish on Shiro's is pretty ridiculous. The way the pocket clip has the nice flowing milling right here. It's great. It's nice in and out of the pocket. This backspacer, I love this. And there's other things with, there's other knives that have different patterns here and on the backspacer. Like on the neon, for example. Let's just pull it out and maybe we'll... Yeah, you see how this has like, it's a little bit more of a separated, a little bit more spread out gear pattern. And then the jimping is basically the same, which kind of makes this is more aesthetic jimping at that point. It doesn't really grip. I really love the way that they did this one, where this is usable. This has a function. It's not just for show. And this jimping is actually nice. It's really comfortable. It's a great texture. It actually gives you something. as far as the action and the flipper tab in general, they do really good flipper tabs, especially on this big model. Like, it's just a nice, it's low profile enough, but it gives you some room, and you could do any type of, you want to kind of light switch. I mean, the way I do light switch is kind of like a down and back kind of light switch. Push button. It's kind of a mix between the two that I really like doing. The way my finger kind of ends up back, but I'm still pushing down. That's my favorite way to do a flipper tab. But it's really comfortable. I mean, you could just do actual light switch flicky things. And that offers you like a different tone. That's another cool thing about this knife, is like the sounds that it makes. If I turn it on its side a little bit and I light switch, it's a nice crack. You could really scare some people opening this knife up. Or if you just do like a light switch, it's a little bit, it's a little bit less aggressive, just a little bit. The other way has like a little bit more of a clack. And then you kind of lose a little bit of that the more you kind of turn your hand. Then it kind of goes instead of. Hard to explain. This is why, you really got to handle things in person to fully understand. But yeah, I mean, the strong detent, I mean, that's one of my favorite things in the world is, not like absurdly strong where you can't actually flip the knife or anything, but this thing is dialed just beautifully. Out of the box, though, it is a little hard, and I don't know if that's because your hands aren't really used to it, or if it's really just that strong right out of the box. But this was pretty damn strong right off the bat, and it did kind of hurt my finger after a while because, I'm a maniac, and I like to just, especially if I get a new knife, I want to play with it and flip it constantly. Number one, to break it in even quicker at that rate. Number two, because I just got it and I want to, I want to enjoy the new thing that I got. But yeah, I really love the way this thing is smoothed out, and it's even better action than like my Neon, and which is good, but it's a different type of action. The smaller knife just has its different sounds. It has a different feel, and I think that goes pretty much across all brands of pocket knives. I feel like, generally speaking, the bigger knife will have like the nicer action overall. I think I even like what I've seen. I haven't handled Herman knives really, but like what I've seen is that the smaller ones tend to have like a weaker detent, for example. So, and that kind of translates here too. Although this isn't like like a Herman Micro Sting where I saw that it was like a pretty weak detent. Like, this is still a strong detent. Don't get me wrong, but this is just the big one's just more crisp. You get a little more clicky, clacky with this. Or more clicky is really what I'm trying to say. And then this one is it just cracks. It's so good. Real quick, we can compare these real quick. I mean, look at the size of this knife. This thing is a big knife. Let's put it up against some other things here. Rask Grimsmo. Beautiful, beautiful knife. I love it. Let's flip this around. We will go big to small. Yeah, so a little bit bigger than a Rask. I think a Rask is a 3.5-inch blade. This is 3.75, but look at the cutting edge situation. I'm jumping around a little bit, but this might be a good time to talk about it. Let's get the Neon out of here for now. So you got like a 3.5-inch blade here, but the cutting edge, I'd probably say it's, I don't know, Maybe it's like 3.3 or something, let's say. So the cutting edge on the rasp is less than the actual blade length, from like here to here as the blade length. You could see that the cutting edge, it only starts there. So it's less. On the Shiro, the cutting edge is more than the actual blade length somehow or another. And I think that's because like, where the edge starts is like pretty much, it's actually behind where the blade starts to pop out of the scale here. So the edge is coming all the way back here rather than like, the handle being over here, or like the way a lot of knives have a plunge grind, like you'll end up starting the edge somewhere over here. So you're missing all of this, and that's where you kind of like, usually you get a, less amount of cutting edge, for the amount of blade length that you're getting. If it's a 4-inch blade, you're getting, 3.6 cutting edge. But here, they don't do that. It's very interesting. I don't know that many other knives that I've ever seen that on. I got the Sebenza. Pretty sure that the cutting edge is less than the quoted blade length. Yeah, it'd probably have to be because the edge starts here, the blade comes all the way up to here. So like even if you measured the blade length starting at this corner, it's going to be less. So very interesting that Shiro does that. It's kind of cool, and that's how they can really like pack a lot of cutting edge into this handle. By the way, the centering is just immaculate. If I can get some light on that subject real quick. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, just take my word for it. These, I've never seen a Shiro not be centered. I'm sure there are some that exist, but probably not from the factory. It's probably because somebody messed with something. I don't know. Things happen, but another thing that I like about this particular model is that this is a Gen 4, and I'm pretty sure the previous models didn't have this. Yeah, I'm quite certain. The captured pivot here, which is the way they did it, it's kind of like a star pattern, kind of around the barrel. It's not on the barrel, but it's more on the other side of this face here, and it makes it way easier to like take it apart, and if you want to or need to. Some people don't take knives apart, but and usually when I get a knife, it's like, I kind of want to get in there and clean it and make it fresh, and then kind of go from there. But it makes it so much easier. The neon, while I don't have to take it apart all the time, this has just a free spinning pivot. And if you're putting Loctite in there to make sure that it's not backing out and you can keep the same action going, you're going to want to Loctite it. And the only way to like get in there is to put some pressure down on the blade, and then also kind of having the screwdriver going at the same time. So you end up doing this on the table so that you get some force onto the pivot. And you got to heat it up with a blow dryer. It's a little bit of a bitch, if I'm being honest. They say you can kind of squeeze it. This is good for people that maybe never had a Shiro and they're gonna get one. And if you get one that has a free spinning pivot, like, it is a little bit annoying. But anyway, they say that you can squeeze the blade like this. I don't like this idea. I just don't. So I don't do it. But the idea being that, you're kind of putting more pressure into the pivot, I guess. But I don't know. I worry about the detent ball, so I don't want to be doing that. So what I do is I put force this way, which has worked for me, alongside some heat from a blow dryer, and then it eventually comes off. On the F95, none of this is an issue. If I want to take this apart right now, the little star pattern is going to stop everything in its tracks, and I'll be able to just back this screw out, even if I got to break the Loctite. It's way better. And I think maybe they had that on their custom division knives prior to this, but at least starting with this, and I think on the Stellar, they started doing that. So that's a beautiful thing. Hopefully if they make a new neon, which I don't think they really have made any neons since this version, at least not any updated ones with like a captive pivot. But hopefully the next time around they do that. Another cool little thing that I like about this knife is you can kind of tune it how you want. You know, if you want it to be a little bit tighter and you want to run it a little bit more like a Sebenza, you have the wiggle room on what this pivot tension allows you. I like it kind of somewhere in the middle, and as it stands, this one is kind of tuned for glidey mode. And if I want to, you know, like, but if you want it to be like a little bit stiff where it's, you know, it's still smooth and it's not going to be bumpy. I mean, you don't want to over tighten really any knife with bearings, in my opinion. You know, be careful of doing that. But with this, like, there is some wiggle room. Like, you don't want to go nuts. If you feel like it's just way too tight, yeah, you're going to want to back off of that. But, you know, I've had this knife tuned where, you know, it's more of a shake shut. Like, I just barely wiggled it down and it just falls shut. It's not like Grimsmo Rask falls shut. It still needs a little bit of encouragement, or I got to just bypass my thumb completely, you know, which is cool. But it's kind of your choice. If you want it to be a little bit tighter and run it that way, and like it does, like, you know, it feels more solid when you tune a knife that way. Like the looser it is, even though there's Loctite, like it's kind of tuned with a little bit more give in, you know, in everything coming together. So it's, you know, it's your choice. I like the whole spectrum of it. And, you know, over the last year and a half, I've kind of run it in different ways, a little tighter, a little looser. You know what I mean? It is cool that they do. It's just 2 screws, you know? And speaking of the screws, you know, I guess we could jump into some not so great things about this knife and Shiro in general. We could start with these screws, I guess. Like, I don't really have a problem with them entirely, especially when there's a captive pivot. This one, you know, you don't really have a problem. You can get a penny even in this one, a little copper penny. You could do it on this one too. And for this particular model, no problem. You don't have to buy a tool. You don't have to create a tool. You could just use a penny, and it shouldn't mar up because the penny's softer than this material. So, which I believe these are not titanium. I'm pretty sure these are stainless steel. So, I don't know. Some people are bent out of shape about it, but, you know, that's particularly on this knife. The neon we could talk about in a different video, but not a problem here with disassembly and the type of tool you need for these screws. And speaking of disassemblies, not so great is the loose bearing situation, which I suppose does lend itself to, you know, a little bit smoother action. I think that's kind of how they're dialing in the glide home on the action. Because, like, you know, on the Rask, you have an even smoother action technically, and these are caged bearings. But you can't really tune a Rask. Like, if I tighten this up, it's not going to get to the luxurious feeling that this has. It's like this little middle ground where, you know, it's not drop shut, but it's just this nice little glide home. Again, very luxurious. But yeah, the loose bearings, I think I luckily... So here's what happened. I was disassembling this knife, and I had done it probably 3 times prior to that for my own weird reasons. But one of the balls, I don't know, I think there's like 30 balls in there, something like that. One of them went flying and went onto my wood floor, and I heard it, and they're small, like you really can't see it very well. And if you got a rug, forget about it. Don't even look for it. But because I had wood floors, I decided to, take a look for this ball bearing. And luckily I found it because I knew the general direction that it was. It was under my desk, wrapped in some dust. There was a little dust bunny, and then I was able to catch a glimmer with my flashlight of the bearing. Otherwise, that thing was gone. And, if you lose one bearing, there's enough in here that it probably wouldn't matter, but that would kill my OCD, knowing that there was one bearing missing, a little empty slot. So that's not great. The other thing is, if you do have issues with this knife, warranty-wise, or with any Shiro, it's not entirely straightforward to make that happen. I'm pretty sure the only way is to go through Recon 1 and send it to them and then send it to Russia. Somebody else can chime in below and tell me any experience they've had, because I haven't had to do that, but it's something to think about. It's kind of the nice thing about Chris Reeve. It's I'll just send it to Idaho. It's close by. It's not going overseas. Less likely to get lost really in the mail. It won't be at the factory nearly as long. I think I've seen people waiting for their Shiro to come back for 6 months, and it's that's not great. And luckily, I think they're all made well enough to the degree. Well, they're made very well, but that most people aren't sending in Shiros for warranty service. But it's something to consider. Where you got to send this to Russia if anything goes wrong. You can buy parts. They do pop up on Recon 1 where I did do that. I bought kind of an extra screw set and an extra thing of bearings, which is useful to have around, because if they start flying around the house, then, I kind of want to just pop one in. I don't want to be sending this to Russia for a bearing or something. That would just be stupid. So anyway, the other thing is this blade steel. They're using M390, which is it's an awesome steel, but I feel like Shiro, that's all, especially in this tier of knife that they've been doing for a while. They're kind of upper end production knives, such as the Neon or the Stellar. There are cheaper versions of those knives that have a different steel, but it's always M390, which to me is a little bit annoying. After all these years, I kind of didn't mind for a while, but M390, it's the same steel coming out of Shiro, unless you get one of their custom division knives that they were doing, S90V, or I think even coming up they're doing kind of a show. I think they're doing the CCKS exclusive is going to be in MagnaCut, but you can't get your hands on that. You either got to win a lottery, or you got to buy it for more on the secondary, and which you can get, the show specials you can typically get for a decent price, on the secondary. But the custom division ones, forget about it. It's $1,500 table price, and then you're gonna pay $3,500 for it after the fact, and then they'll give you S90V or MagnaCut or Van-X, So I don't love that they just keep hammering away M390. They're just, I guess not every company is going to be like Spyderco. They're just going to use what they use, and it doesn't entirely matter. But M390 isn't my overall favorite, so I'd like to have a Shiro that isn't in that. Although I think their M390 is done very well. I sharpened up the Neon, and it seems to be a nice example of M390, because I've had other M390 that it was a little chippier. The sharpening was a little bit weirder. I don't know. So I guess that's always going to depend on the maker. Oh, one other not so great thing that I want to note is, this isn't a huge deal. I don't mind when knives start to look worn in, but the anodizing, you probably have seen this already. The anodizing in this area you kind of lose the blue. I mean, you lose how it looks in general. How this looked out of the box. There was a little bit more of a vibrant blue. And particularly in this area, because this is where like my thumb goes for when I'm flipping it, so I'm playing with the knife all the time. This just wore in, and there's no way that you can't use Windex to get this back. It's just the anodizing has officially faded. And without re-anodizing it, it's just not going to happen. So these areas, they kind of get this purpley, gray kind of area at that point, which kind of bugs me because it doesn't like wear evenly. If this was even, I can't even force this to wear evenly for some reason because my thumb and my finger, they're always in that area. But I don't love that. They do make just a plain titanium version of this that, if I sell this knife and then I want another one again in the future, I might get the plain titanium to avoid this happening. But I do love the blue, and I like the, the Ninja Turtle aspect of it. But yeah, that's not something that I love. Kind of how quickly that faded. I've had other anodizing that doesn't fade that quickly, like even the Holt stuff. Although that did it started to do a similar thing, but maybe not quite as quick. I don't know. It's hard to tell and it's hard to remember, but yeah, anodizing, this is kind of why I stick to, plain titanium a lot of times because I don't love that aesthetic very much. It's just, I don't mind it, but it's not my favorite thing in the world to see that happen, especially that quickly. I think the last thing I want to talk about that's not too great is that it's just, it's a really expensive knife. And that's kind of where I'm getting with my collection is like, yeah, I don't know if I can inevitably hang on to like a knife like this, because it was $1,150 is what I paid for this like a year and a half ago. If they do another drop of these, they might be up at $1,200 now. Like, who knows? But yeah, it's a little bit much. And I have X amount of knives in this price range, which it's like I can't have too many of them. And this one's a little big. So I almost lean towards something that's a little bit smaller. It's still an expensive knife. And I'm willing to use it. And I'll keep it around. And it's really sweet. It's got a great action, like whatever, like the Rask. But this one is like just on the border of, it's a 4-inch blade. It's like I don't need it. Just slipped off the flipper tab there. I just don't need a knife this size, but it's so awesome that I want to keep it. But I can't keep every knife. But it's a toy at that point. I haven't done, a ridiculous amount of cutting at all with this. I cut some cardboard, a zip tie, and probably a bunch of paper. And that was probably pretty much it. The rest of it is kind of like, I might probably opened a box too. But even that, it's like having this big blade opening a box. It's like, that's why you don't need it. And that's why I feel like EDC knives are, you're better in that like 3-inch to 3.5 tops kind of thing. Otherwise, it's a little too much. Like kind of, for example, at work sometimes, like I'll have like a bag of rags that I'll kind of like twist it up and then I'll make like a clean cut. It's hard to explain, but I'll kind of like, wrap it over here to like pull through a cut. And like when I go to enter in to make the cut, it's like I gotta be careful that I'm not gonna stab myself because I have less control when this tip is so far away from my hand. So it's kind of like a little bit more finicky to get in there cleanly, rather than like, on a little Elementum EDC knife, like you can kind of just, I don't know, it's a little bit safer in that way. So yeah, it's another one of those, it's an expensive knife that I technically don't need. And that kind of bugs my brain when I look at a table of knives that I have and, and I don't know, for some reason I don't put this to use. And again, it kind of just becomes a toy that I like to play with because I love the action on this knife. but I feel like at some point I probably got to sell it. But then like I'm betwixt and between on like, well, do I sell the neon too? Because it's like, well, that's kind of, I have kind of a redundancy in my collection where the neon becomes a little bit less necessary to be keeping around. But even like between the two, it's like, which one do I sell? Let me know what you guys think on which one you would choose. Like, you got the better action here. It's better, it's smoother, it's snappier, it's more capable in general. I mean, the big blade, although this is plenty of blade. What am I talking about? But, this one is a little bit less satisfying in a bunch of ways, but it's a better EDC, but I love the action more on this. These are the kinds of things that go on in my brain, where it's like, well, this one's too big, so you sell that one, keep this one, and maybe decide later if you're going to sell that one too. But, it's like, I've sold knives that I loved before. I sold my haptic, my Holt haptic, the Craig Brown Cortex XL. Those were two that were, pretty sweet high-end knives that I could have kept, but it was kind of like this though. It's like this one I've used. You could see there's some marks here, and I sharpened it. So this knife has been used. So I've at least done that with this. Like I've put this through some paces, but this thing, no. And the haptic, no. The Cortex, no. These knives, they don't get used. And if I'm not going to use them, then I kind of can't justify keeping them around if I'm not going to use them. If I'm just going to play with them, then I got to, I kind of have to just move things along and, maybe I'll get something else. I'll get another Spyderco, something that's not $1,150 that I have to sink into something, and then that's kind of just, there's $1,150 sitting on the table. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up what any issues that I have with the knife, because I love it a lot. This is a great iteration of this model. There are other versions of this, older versions that you could take a look at, but I think this one is the best F95 before you start getting up to the custom division realm. So yeah, I mean, if you guys got the money and you really don't care, or if you want to check it out, like, you probably wouldn't lose too much on the secondary of selling this. So yeah, if you guys, if you want to check one of these out, it's really a great knife. If you're anything like me, where it's like, well, I already got, I got an Oz Roosevelt and a Grimsmo Rask, like, it gets ridiculous after a while, like, don't go overboard with spending money that maybe you don't have, for the sake of a knife, even though you can probably get your money out of it. There's always a justification, right? But, I can't entirely just recommend this to people because it's a lot of money. And I recommend people, get their hands on it and feel what that feels like. I mean, and if that means buying it and then, maybe selling it for a loss, then so be it, for the sake of, feeling the action and having some fun with it, So yeah, we'll see. Time will tell if this stays in my collection. But that pretty much wraps it up, guys. I'll have some more reviews coming up in the near future. Probably do the Rask review soon and some other ones. So keep an eye out for that. And I will catch you guys later. See ya.